Well, so like I'm a big believer in like you can trick yourself into anything, and so like because like 2 years is fairly fast, but it also is a slow progression, right? Like I didn't wake up the next day and I'm like, oh, so like I slowly got more tired. I slowly had less energy. My clothes started to fit a little bit tighter. I always wore fairly big clothes, so it was like I had to go buy new clothes. I just filled out my extra large or double XL t-shirt differently. Um, and because I was in construction and moving around all the time, I considered myself to be very strong. And it wasn't until like someone actually put it in front of me. A really close friend challenged me to do a pull up, and I thought like, I throw 90-pound sacks of concrete on my shoulder and walk up the stairs all day long. Like, yeah, no problem. But I could barely hold my own body weight on the bar, and so it was like, oh, like, and for me that was kind of the sobering moment. It was like, holy shit, like. I thought I was strong. I thought I was capable, and I was, for lack of better terms, lying to myself. And it wasn't until I had that moment of like, oh, like if I needed to, I couldn't even pull myself out of a hole.
Just make it a goal, not necessarily to work out for 45 minutes. Just make it a goal in the beginning, just to show up at the gym. Just show up at the gym. Just get there, right? Sit down on the couch, do whatever it is. Just show up at the gym. And then what's going to happen is eventually you're saying, hey, you know what? I'm already at the gym. I might as well do something. Right? And then you take it one step from there and just like, hey, go on the treadmill. I'm only going to walk for a couple of minutes. And then next thing you know, you look down at your watch. You're like, wow, I just did 2 minutes. You know what? I might as well just do 30. Right? So part of it, and it's funny because this saying fits in so much in so many different areas of your life. 90% of success is just showing up.
When you're in really good physical shape, you get treated with a lot more respect. And it has nothing to do with the way that you look and everything to do with you being a physical representation of a work ethic that most people don't have. So they just respect that. Just like when you see someone that has a, $500,000 car, it doesn't really matter how they got it. You're just like, oh shit, like what is he into? I want to know, right? And so like same thing when you're in really good shape, your physical representation of a work ethic most people don't have, and they give you that respect from the jump, and they automatically trust you more because they know you do what you say you're going to do because you look the way you do.
What you notice too is when you have drinks, just the quality of sleep just goes down hardcore. And it has something to do with how your body metabolizes the alcohol and also the oxygen levels in your blood and how those two correlate. So a lot of people say, oh, well, you shouldn't drink, period. Well, yes and no, right? I mean, no one's saying that you can't drink, right? But just understand that you should give yourself enough time between the last cocktail that you have and give your body the ability to metabolize that alcohol so that way you can regenerate the overall oxygen levels in your body so that you can afford to have a good night's sleep. And these are all small little metrics that if you're tracking it, now you're like, okay, I know how my body responds to 1 cocktail, 2 cocktails, 3 cocktails.
Owning any type of restoration business is demanding of your time, your energy, and resources. And that's why we're here. This is Restoration Domination. If you're a contractor in water mitigation, mold remediation, biohazard cleanup, roofers, or public adjusters, you'll learn how to dominate using some of the techniques and strategies that our guests will share. We'll interview top industry insiders, movers and shakers, hustlers and hackers, and anyone dominating their industry. This is Restoration Domination. Hustle, hack, and dominate. And here's your host, Rico Garcia.
All right, guys, what is going on? Welcome to another episode of Restoration Domination. And today, this is going to be a very special episode. We talk about water mitigation and roofing and sales and this and that, but not a lot of people spend a lot of time talking about your most valuable asset in your business, which just so happens to be you. You are the most valuable asset in your business because at the end of the day, the longer that you have health, the longer that you have more energy, the more that you can impact the community, the more that you can impact your family, the more that you can go ahead and generate money, right? Like that's what it's all about. You can have all the best ideas in the world, but if you don't have the energy and the physical wherewithal to go ahead and exert the energy that's needed to accomplish your goals, well, guess what? You're just not going to make it. So today we have a very, very special guest. Full disclosure, guys. If you watch this with your significant other, with your lady, make sure that they don't check out this guy's Instagram because the guy is shredded. We're joined by none other than Mickey Jogoleff. Hopefully I got that right. I think I did. So he's a fitness coach. He's an entrepreneur, has been in the construction game. And today we're going to be talking about health and fitness and how to give you some tips on how to become more fit. So Mickey, thank you so much for being on the show, man. Go ahead and fill in some of the gaps on the introduction there. Like, who are you? What do you do? And let's take it from there.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, thank you for having me. Excited to be here. So I run the sales or help run sales for SupraHuman, and that's a company run by John Madsen. He's a former NFL player. What we do is dive deep into overall performance. We work with high-level CEOs, entrepreneurs, professional athletes, people that are very successful in their careers, and then help get their body into elite performance as well. And so I worked my way into that position after, like I said, my background's in construction. Grew up, did that for 15 years. And then in that time, got super unhealthy, then decided, hey, look, like you were saying, Rico, my body is my most valuable asset, so I better start taking care of myself. And then I saw the intention there overflow into every area of my life. I completely changed my life. I opened a brick and mortar gym, had great success there, sold that business, and fortunately put me in the position that I'm in now.
Which is amazing. So let's dive into the construction time of your life, right? Because again, a lot of us that own restoration companies, roofing companies, we're just out in the service-based business. We're constantly on the road, and it's really difficult to juggle the projects that you have going on and then also kind of keeping your health and your fitness top of mind. So what was your journey like? Like when you were in the truck and when you were managing all of these projects or doing stuff in the construction arena, what did your day-to-day look like normally before you got into the whole health and fitness side?
Yeah. So realistically, I would wake up last minute, roll out of bed, grab some clothes, hope they were clean. I'd head out the door, and I would run off of coffee and cigarettes for the majority of the day, work until I had a break or had to go on a supply run. Then on my run, I would stop by, I'm from Southern California, so, a taco shop or some fast food, get a burrito, a burger, whatever, and then eat that in the truck on the way back to the site. And then work till the sun went down, and then head to the gas station, grab some beers, go home, drink until I passed out, and do it all over again. Right.
And when on that journey, which is probably not a good journey looking back hindsight, how much weight did you put on total? Like, what was your max weight?
Yeah, 95 pounds. So about just under 100 pounds in a little less than 2 years.
Which is quite a bit of weight.
Yeah.
So how did that affect did you notice that your performance was falling behind? Did you feel that you had less energy? What was going on in the mind while you realized, like when you looked on the scale and you're like, wow, I'm 95 pounds overweight. Like, this is crazy. No wonder I'm feeling, how did you feel at that point?
Well, so like I'm a big believer in like you can trick yourself into anything. And so like because like 2 years is fairly fast, but it also is a slow progression, right? Like I didn't wake up the next day and I'm like, oh, so like I slowly got more tired. I slowly had less energy. My clothes started to fit a little bit tighter. I always wore fairly big clothes, so it was like I had to go buy new clothes. I just filled out my extra large or double XL t-shirt differently. And because I was in construction and moving around all the time, I considered myself to be very strong. And it wasn't until like someone actually put it in front of me. A really close friend challenged me to do a pull-up, and I thought like, I throw 90-pound sacks of concrete on my shoulder and
you're
walk
like,
up the stairs
I got
all day
this.
long. Yeah, no problem. But I could barely hold my own body weight on the bar. And so it was like, and for me, that was kind of the sobering moment. It was like, holy shit. Like I thought I was strong. I thought I was capable. And I was, for lack of better terms, lying to myself. And it wasn't until I had that moment of like, if I needed to, I couldn't even pull myself out of a hole.
So once you realize that, where did the shift actually happen to say, okay, you know what? I need to go ahead and take control of my body. And how did that portion of your journey look?
Yeah, I mean, when I first got into it, I had no idea what I was doing. And so I just did what most people would try to do is I I try to be a little bit more mindful about my eating or consumption. And so for me, the easiest thing to cut out at first was, and I didn't cut it out completely, I just reduced the amount of alcohol that I drank. And so like I said, at this point, not someone you would want to role model, but I was drinking 2 to 3 tall cans on the way home from job sites, right? And so like for me, the first step was just like, all right, like how about I'm responsible and I won't have a beer until I get home. And so like little things like that. And then I noticed that like, oh, like once I got home, if I wasn't already buzzed, it didn't just like snowball into everything else. And so like little changes like that and building on it and taking the time to set myself up for success with a little bit of forethought. So especially when it came to food. And so most of it was just reducing my intake in the beginning because I didn't have the time or energy to go work out or do something outside of being on site.
So one of the biggest issues that as an entrepreneur or anybody who's working in the trades, one of the biggest issues is, man, I am tired. I'm exhausted. I've had to do so much throughout the day. And you're basically faced with 3 options, right? At least in my mind. I'm sure there's probably more, but off the top of my head, especially if you're an entrepreneur in the trades, one of the options is, hey, I've got X amount of hours left in the day. I could either continue grinding to make more money or have some kind of money-making activity that I'm focused on. 2, I could probably use the downtime because I'm really spent and this is probably the only couple hours I'm going to have to unwind a little bit. Or 3, I could exert a tremendous amount of energy going for a walk, doing cardio, lifting weights, and all of a sudden that option does not sound so appealing. So what does the mental game look like in order to go from tired entrepreneur, exhausted worker to getting your ass in the gym, doing whatever it is that you have to do? Did you just go in guns blazing, or was this small incremental steps?
I would say a little bit of both. I say it was like a defining decision and then building on that. So it wasn't like 0 to 100 overnight, but the decision was like, hey, look, I have to do something differently. And so questioning myself, right? So like you said, at the end of the day, you're faced with a few different options. And so like when you're there, at least for me, the thing that made the biggest difference was looking at taking care of myself as an income producing activity or ensuring future work. So it was like, hey, look, taking care of myself is actually growing the business or making sure that I'm taken care of. And then another thing that made a huge difference for me was, and it sounds like, wordplay or just being stupid, but it makes all the difference in the world, is that I just didn't consider my day done until I did my workout outside of, like, once I started working out. So I was like, all right, I'm going to work out 3 or 4 days a week. And once I decided, like, I was just going to come home and get it done or go wherever I was going to go and work out, and then my day was over after that, was a game changer for me, because coming home and feeling like, all right, I'm done, and then trying to get momentum after that was not possible for me. So it was like, I just extended my day a little bit. So that way it was like, all right, cool. After this, my work day is done. So I just put it in my work day.
And you just considered that as part of the daily grind, the daily hustle was, hey, I took care of my business. I took care of all of my things that were on my calendar for the day, but you just inserted yourself there and you said, hey, I also need to go ahead and take care of my body. I need to take care of my mind. And that was when you finally said, okay, cool, this is the end of my day.
Yeah, and so that I just had to insert that in there, and it was like you said, it was a part of the workday, something that I needed to do for myself, and it's developed over the years. But at first, it was like, a little workout or throwing some food in a crock pot, so that way like I could have food for a few days without having to worry about cooking or doing anything like that. So it was like either prepping something to eat for the following day or doing some form of movement.
So today I have a few little props, because one thing that I'm, and again, full disclosure, I eat healthy and work out every single day except for the days that I don't. And I have a lot of those days that are exempt from that. But that being said, it is still part of what we do, especially here at the house. And when we're on track, for me, I have to measure everything. If I can't measure it, it's very easy for me to just say, I'll do it tomorrow, right? So talking about, only because you mentioned it, meal prepping is extremely important. And it just really helps eliminate some of the risks of slipping and ruining a day or ruining a meal because you forgot to meal prep and you forgot to take it. So something that I did is I bought just these small little containers. And typically, one of the main things that I had an issue with, and again, maybe you can relate to this once you started getting into your diet, one of the main things is I didn't want to eat cold food all the time. In other words, when you're out there, typically you have a cooler, you could take your cooler. I have this little backpack that I bought a while back. It's called a 6-pack, and I can take my computer, I can take my 3 meals for the day and a whole bunch of really cool stuff. But I didn't want to eat cold meals all the time. So what I did was we meal prep typically for the week. And when I say me, my wife and I, mainly she meal preps, full disclosure. So, which by the way, you should probably follow her on Instagram because her meal prep page is just absolutely insane. I'll go ahead and I'll drop a link in the show notes and in the description of the video below. But basically what we did was I didn't want to eat salads all day because it just turns me off. So now what I did is I pack my food in here whenever I'm going to be out in the field, and I know that I'm out in the field. I just pack my food, and then I went onto Amazon and I found this cool little lunchbox. And basically all it is a food warmer that it plugs right into the cigarette lighter of your truck or your vehicle. And let's say you're going to take your lunch at 12, you pop your hot meal in there, whatever it is that you're going to eat from the previous day. And by the time that you get around to eating, like, you have a fresh, hot, super healthy meal. So what did you have any little hacks like that you did for yourself?
So like I said, for the most part, it was just I was a single guy in my 20s. So it was just throwing meat and beans in a crock pot and just who cares what it looked like and how it tasted. It was just a means to an end. But as I got into, as I opened the gym and I started helping people more with nutrition, I started to figure out more to help my clients be set up for success. So for sure, one of the things that's super convenient for a lot of people, prepping out your meals like that ahead of time helps. If you don't have a fancy lunchbox, most gas stations have microwaves that you can use. So you don't have to buy anything. You can just walk in there and throw your food in there. I used to do it all the time and they won't say anything. So if you wanted a fresh meal, you could on your drive, throw it in a microwave at a gas station and then be good. But the thing that for me makes the biggest difference in a lot of my clients in the nutrition space is not necessarily prepping each individual meal, but bulk cooking stuff. So if you just grill a bunch of chicken, if you cook a bunch of rice, if you do whatever, and it's fairly flavor neutral, then you can grab and go and mix things up and flavor it as you want throughout the days or the weeks. So that way you don't get burned out on the same food, even though it's the same ingredients. If it tastes different, it makes for a different experience. And it makes it easier to prep, right? If you're barbecuing 15 pounds of meat, it takes the same amount of time as cooking one chicken breast. And the same thing, cooking, a couple cups of rice or vegetables doesn't take any longer. So just make 5 times as much and then put it in the fridge. And then you can portion it out as you go or way ahead of time or whatever. So
as far as kind of switching gears here a little bit, a lot of people, I've had this conversation and talking about aesthetics and just bodily aesthetics. Did you notice that your reception when you were first meeting someone and you were talking about business, you were talking about opportunities, did you notice that there was a difference in aesthetics? Once you started looking and feeling better, that the reception from the person that you were speaking to was greater and more open-armed per se?
For sure. And so one of the things that I'm glad you brought it up, because one of the things I like to say is it's kind of an uncommon thing to say, or people don't really like it. But when you're in really good physical shape, you get treated with a lot more respect. And it has nothing to do with the way that you look and everything to do with you being a physical representation of a work ethic that most people don't have. So they just respect that. Just like when you see someone that has a $500,000 car, it doesn't really matter how they got it. You're just oh shit, what is he into? I want to know, right? And so same thing when you're in really good shape, your physical representation of a work ethic most people don't have, and they give you that respect from the jump, and they automatically trust you more because they know you do what you say you're going to do because you look the way you do. But no one that way
exactly. And it was one of the things that I've noticed, and again, it's a very taboo subject, right?
Oh, yeah.
Especially nowadays, because everybody wants to believe that no one's judging the book by their cover. But let's call a spade a spade. If you are 30, 40, 50, 60 pounds, 80 pounds, 100 pounds overweight, and your clothes doesn't quite fit right, and it doesn't really matter. The first thing that people look at is that. It is what it is. You are you. And all of a sudden you start talking about business, or you start talking about an opportunity, you start talking about this, or you start talking about that. There's always like this thing in the back of your mind where if that exact same conversation was coming from an individual who was physically fit, and again, we're not talking about Mr. Olympia here. Like, we're just talking about physically fit, like someone who's taken the time to take care of their body. All of a sudden, this messaging totally changes. As a matter of fact, a prime example of this is look at sales reps. Companies that do statistically better with their sales reps are sales reps that are considered attractive by the masses, whether it's, their physical appearance, whatever the case may be, but there needs to be a degree of attractiveness, and being physically fit helps along the way as far as business is concerned. Talking about that, did you personally see a correlation between your earned income and how you once you started getting fit?
Oh, for sure. I make way more money than I did now than I did in the past, like exponential increase. But like you were saying, like, if people like to use the book by a cover thing, but like, if you're all in business, and so like you probably have some type of marketing material or a business card or whatever, and you're not like, you don't give it's not like, I can give two shits about how this looks as long as the information's good. Like, it's the same thing about yourself. Like, the first thing that people see is what they see. And if you don't take care of that, you're putting yourself at a deficit, and you may have the skill to be able to come out of that hole, but why do that to yourself? Make it easier. But yeah, for sure, like, money, way better after taking care of myself.
Yeah, yes. And so let's talk about some like workout routines. Like, what would you suggest to the construction worker, to the restoration worker, to the guy who's like legitimately just putting in a shit ton of hours? What do you recommend? Do you recommend for them to immediately start jumping in the gym? Do you recommend for them to start doing some like in-home workouts? Like, what would your typical coaching look like in that particular case?
It's, once again, it's a little, against the grain, but I would say, look at it like you would Netflix. So like, there is no one exercise that's going to be supreme for everyone. It's about finding something that you enjoy enough to keep doing. So like, if you find a show that you enjoy on Netflix, you'll binge watch the shit out of it. No one has to force you to do it. And so like, the thing that's going to be the best, especially when your energy and your willpower is already taxed from having a long day, is doing something that you don't hate doing. So like, if you don't like going to the gym, don't go to the gym. If you like going for a hike or a walk, then do that. If you like riding a bike, like whatever it is that you can find enjoyment in that is also moving your body, start there. And then you'll develop that habit, because it'll be a promise that you're keeping with yourself. And then you could kind of challenge your willpower and get into things that are a little bit more uncomfortable. But in the beginning, when you're developing a routine, doing something that you hate is probably like the least beneficial thing you can do.
And the other thing too is just getting in the action. And I don't remember where I read or where I listened to something along the lines of, if you're looking to establish a new routine, particularly when it comes down to like working out, just make it a goal, not necessarily to work out for 45 minutes. Just make it a goal in the beginning, just to show up at the gym. Just show up at the gym. Just get there. Sit down on the couch, do whatever it is, just show up at the gym. And then what's going to happen is eventually you're saying, hey, you know what? I'm already at the gym. I might as well do something. And then you take it one step from there and just like, hey, go on the treadmill. I'm only going to walk for a couple of minutes. And then next thing you know, you look down at your watch. You're like, wow, I just did 2 minutes. You know what? I might as well just do 30. So part of it, and it's funny because this saying fits in so much in so many different areas of your life. 90% of success is just showing up. It's just showing up for whatever activity it is that you're going to do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, then like, to me, like setting tangible goals or something that's like, oh, whatever, makes for the ability to get quick wins and keep pushing forward, because people are progressive, right? Like, they want those wins. And so if it's like, oh, I'm going to do 5,000 burpees every day for the next 30 days and they can't do it, like, they feel like a failure. But if it's like, all right, you know what, I'll do 5 push-ups every time I get out of the truck, or like in the morning, like while I'm waiting for my coffee, I'll do, 10 push-ups, and like, that's it for the day. And then you build on that. But like, one of the things that's weird about people is that we will go out of our way to keep a promise that we make to someone else. But when we make a promise to ourselves, it's the first thing to go. And so like, you lose credibility with yourself the more you do that. And so the best way to establish strength and confidence is to rebuild that with yourself. And it starts with little wins. Like, all right, I'm going to brush my teeth twice a day, or I'm going to do push-ups, or I'm going to do like whatever it is, and then actually doing it, because then you reinforce that you do the things that you say. So then when you say bigger and bigger things, you do them anyways.
So as far as like right now, like, are you helping on the coaching side? Do you have a fitness program? Like, how is it that you're helping the masses get into better shape?
So mostly I bring them to Supra, and I get them set up with a coach. And so for me, like, one of the things that I learned early on is that I personally can't help everyone, but if I can help people get connected in the right places, then I can help more people at once. And so rather than me trying to figure out how I can service everyone, I pass them on to the team, and I know that they're taken care of. And
typically SupraHuman is set up in what kind of fashion?
So it's remote coaching. And so the way that we focus on is that one of the pillars in the very forefront is actually mindset, because like you were saying, you could have the perfect program or the perfect business, but if your mind's not in it, you're screwed. And so we talk about mindset, making sure that you're going after the things that you want and keeping the promises that you make to yourself. And then we work on nutritional targets and training targets to change your physique, the way you look, your energy, all of that. Because one of the things that I learned, and one of the things that we focus on here, is that when you put focus energy into your physique and you see a change, you realize that if you put focus energy into things, you can get the result that you want. And so like it starts with the body, and then it overflows into business, relationship, finances, like all of those other things. But we do one-on-one nutritional coaching, training, and then accountability and support needed to make adjustments as life adjusts, because most of the people that I work with are successful entrepreneurs and their schedule is fluid. And so it's not as easy as, oh, do this every day, because shit changes, right? So it's like, all right, you had a fire you had to put out. How can you adjust? And the coach helps them work through those situations, because it's situations that the coach has seen hundreds or thousands of times.
And coaching and mentoring, again, is just one of those things. Having accountability is just one of those things that most successful entrepreneurs, we still need that. Like, we still need to have someone, an expert in their particular field, to help us achieve those particular goals. When you and I were chatting on Instagram, you were actually telling me that, you know, as a matter of fact, one of the guests that I had recently on the show, Sam Taggart, which, you know, you're helping him already, you know, get into better shape. And part of the success is just having the right coach for the right thing to go ahead and help you achieve those goals.
For sure. Well, like you said, to, you know, kind of come full circle with some of the things that you personally do, is that everything that gets measured gets managed. So if you figure out a way to be able to track the activities that you're doing and the results that they're bearing, you can adjust the activities to get the result that you want. And so and then for most people, the evolution to that is what's reported gets improved. And so you measure the things that you're doing, and if you report that to someone, they can help you adjust. And that's what really good coaching is a way to measure and track, and then someone that you report it to so that they can help you make the appropriate adjustments. And so same thing, like one of the ways I like to relate, you know, health and fitness is very, very similar to business, is that like, if you understand your numbers, then like you can scale to as large as you want. Like when you're working with a coach in regards to health and fitness, their job should be to help you identify the levers you can pull on to get the result that you want. That way, you know, at any given time what you need to do to be in whatever shape that you want. Very similar to scaling your business. If you know, hey, look, it takes this many sales appointments to lock in this many contracts to make this amount of money, you know what you need to do in order to hit your financial targets, and your health is no different.
So one of the things that I do, and again, everybody's got different ideas as far as dieting is concerned, and you kind of have to play with it all. So I'm a big fan of Tim Ferriss, and I've read a lot of, you know, his content and his books, and he's got, you know, obviously the 4-Hour Work Week, he's got 4-Hour Body and all of this stuff. So we originally, when we started, and when I say we, my wife and I started paying a lot more attention as to what we were eating, how we were eating, and we actually got intentional about what we were doing. We started off with the slow carb diet. And from there, we made a transition into more of the ketogenic lifestyle. And that for me was really, honestly, it was good. And it was also easy. It was like one of the easier ones to follow, because even if you kind of have a little bit of discipline and you're going to fall off the rails, there's still so much liberties there. But even with on the ketogenic diet, like one of the things that I had to do is I had to measure. So one of the things that I got was this little keto meter, which is basically just called Keto Mojo. You can find that on Amazon. I'll actually leave a link in the video description and in the show notes below. But this is what I needed to do for myself personally. My wife can go ages and she doesn't need to measure and she'll just stay on track because she's just that focused. Me, if I don't have a number to look at, it's just easy for me to say, well, maybe I'm in ketosis, maybe I'm not in ketosis. Is there like a meal plan or dietary fad, if you will, that you prefer one over another, or not really?
So same as the workout. Like you said, being like keto works for you. It's like the reality is that weight loss is just a matter of being in a calculated deficit. And so however you enjoy being in a deficit is going to work. So some people prefer low carbs, some people prefer low fat, some people prefer high protein, some people they just want to go vegan or vegetarian and drop a whole macronutrient. It's like, oh, cool. But all it is, and same thing with even fasting. It's just an intentional way to put yourself in a deficit. And so with anything that you want to be successful at, you have to find something that you're willing to do long term. Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game. You're not in this to cross a finish line. You're in this to keep playing. And so for you, if you enjoy ketosis, then fantastic. For me, I just do I just track my macros, and as long as I stay within my totals, it doesn't really matter. I don't view any food as good or bad or sugar is this. I don't really care. I would if it looks like it's full of chemicals and it has 0 calories, I'm all about it because it keeps me under my totals and I can enjoy it and still look really good. And so if you relate it to a budget, it's if you know your spending limit, and as long as you don't blow your budget, you're good. So that's how I personally do it with macros. And sometimes that means higher fat, this, that, whatever, but my totals always stay within range, and then makes it easy.
For me, it's actually been something from a dietary standpoint where before the body, I pay a lot more attention to the mind. And so I'm constantly looking for diets or supplements that are going to enhance my cognitive function first. And then if I can get a secondary benefit on the physical side, all the better. And you touched on something that I think is really important, really interesting, which is fasting. Do you have a fasting routine? Do you have that on the schedule, or is that something that you really don't pay attention to? Or do you recommend fasting? Do you not recommend fasting? What's your take on that?
I always joke that everyone fasts every day. It's just a matter of you stop eating dinner and then you wake up in the morning and you have breakfast or your first meal, whatever you do. So everyone fasts to some degree. Like I said, I think that playing with your, if you wanted to call it a feeding window, playing with your feeding window in a way that fits your lifestyle is what's going to be the most beneficial. So I've coached a bunch of people in similar to some of you guys where they're working, 10, 12-hour days. So eating once a day is probably easier for them. And if we can get them dialed in to the way that they want to look and feel with one meal a day, that would be more beneficial than telling someone they have to eat 6 meals a day and it being unrealistic. And so for me, fasting is just a tool to help you get what you want versus an end all be all, right? So using the different things to get the result that you want versus thinking that there's something out there that is the magic thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. 6 meals a day for me is totally unrealistic. I just cannot, just naturally, I just can't do it. I would literally be having to force feed myself in order to get 5 meals in a day. Because honestly, in my most natural state, I can wake up in the morning and really not get hungry till around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's just me in my natural state. And I think that paying attention to your body and how you naturally respond when you naturally have, your feeding window opens up, I think that that's really important, is just paying attention to your body and saying, hey, you know what, this is now when I feel comfortable with eating, and this is when my body's asking for it to be fed. And to pay attention to those kind of metrics, I think is important as well. For sure.
Well, like you said, all of those things can lead into establishing ways to track. You're I don't have to eat breakfast. I don't eat until, noon or 1. Then take note of that. Have your last meal at whatever time, and then realize how big each one of those meals is, and then see how your body's responding, right? If it's trending in the right direction in regards to energy and aesthetics, then you're on the right path. If you're not, then you have a place to adjust from.
Do you have a recommendation as far as a bare bones minimum workout schedule? In other words, you hear lots of different opinions on this. And again, I do think that it is individualized and depending on genetics and depending on a lot of other variables, right? It's not ever one shoe fits all. But do you have a recommendation for how many times at a minimum someone should do, number one, cardio or some kind of cardiovascular exercise, and number two, a weightlifting routine of sorts?
For sure. So I'm a big proponent of resistance training. So weightlifting and 3 to 4 times a week is going to be way more than enough to get you the result that you want. And I also am a big proponent of like, I do absolutely no cardio because I fucking hate it. And so it's like my cardio consists of getting a certain amount of steps, right? So slow controlled steps. So I have a step goal that I hit every day. And like, there's a lot of benefit to that type of slow cardio, is like, especially for you, if like you're thinking about like, you have increased cognitive function, you have increased tolerance to carbohydrates, you have a bunch of positive benefits from walking and having your energy be expended over a long period of time versus like short, intense bursts. Like if you go for a 5-mile run, you put out so much energy that all day you're going to be super hungry and it's going to be so fucking hard not to eat. Whereas like if you just take that same 3 miles and you stretch it out over the day with small little walks, then you get the same caloric burn. It's just life doesn't suck as much. And you have increased cognitive function. You're more creative. Like you can, if you want to eat carbs, you can enjoy more of them without having a negative effect. But I would say resistance training because it helps to build lean mass, and lean mass is what helps in increasing your overall caloric threshold, which means you can eat more food without being fat. And then cardio would be, if you wanted to do it, it would be for, performance, right? Like if you feel like your lung capacity is low or your cardiovascular system is taxed, then you slowly want to build up. But a lot of people think that like doing cardio will improve your health and your aesthetic. Like the only thing that actually benefits from it is your cardiovascular system. So if you feel like you're struggling to breathe walking up the stairs, like you have to weigh out if you want to do cardio or if dropping 40 pounds is going to make you feel like you're not short of breath when you're walking up the stairs anyways. And so like, if you have a goal to run a marathon, you should probably train and run. If you just want to be healthy and look good, then stick to resistance training because you get a better bang for your buck.
And so our show, Hustle, Hack, Dominate, is kind of like the slogan. And I know that a lot of people are going to take what you said as far as I can just break up my little walks because in theory I'm walking at work all day. Is that the same, or does it have to be intentional, like intentional little spurts? Like let's say, for example, in construction or in any kind of service-based business, you're walking to and from the truck and you're walking around the job site. You're walking around all day. Does that have the same effect as saying, okay, I'm going to carve out 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes and I'm going to be intentional about what I'm doing? Do you get the same result or different results?
They can be the same result. So it's not necessarily that you're intentional, it's the target hit. And so that's where tracking, like you said, it makes a big difference. Because if you're tracking your steps, you have like some watch or your phone can fucking track your steps, and it's like, oh, I'm getting 10,000 steps just walking to and from my truck, you can see how your body's responding to that. And if it's not good enough, then you may have to intentionally add more steps or decrease your intake. And so it's not like, oh, being intentional with steps makes the biggest difference, or because energy expended is energy expended. So it doesn't matter if it's in short intentional bursts or if it's over the time because it's a continuum. But what matters is how much energy you output. So if you have a way to track that, then you'll know, oh, cool, walking to and from my truck is enough to be able to sustain the progress that I want. But also like, psychologically, for most people in a labor trade or a trade where they know that they walk 10, 20, 30,000 steps a day, they subconsciously or consciously overconsume because they give themselves permission. Because like, oh, well, I walk 20,000 steps a day, I can have 2 extra beers, or I could do this, or like I can have an extra cup of rice. But it's like half a cup of rice takes almost an hour of strenuous cardio to burn off. So it's like, what would be easier, saying no to half a cup of rice or fucking running your ass for an hour? Like,
right, exactly.
But measuring and tracking all of those things. So like, yes, walking to and from your truck can make all the difference in the world. Like when we had the gym and I used to lead training in classes, I didn't have to be intentional with my steps because I was walking around on the floor all the time and that was enough. Now that I sit behind a desk, I have to schedule in walks. Otherwise, like it'll be the end of the day and I'll have 200 steps.
And tracking is important, especially now. Most of us entrepreneurs, most of the people that are in the field, we've got gear. Like, I've got my Apple Watch, and it's tracking everything. Speaking of tracking, kind of switching gears here, I track obviously my steps and I track my physical activity and all of this stuff. But one really important metric for me is recovery. Mental recovery, physical recovery. How important is sleep in all of this? Because we live in a culture nowadays where the entrepreneur, you're not a real entrepreneur unless you're only sleeping 3 hours a night and you're hustling and you're hustling and you're hustling. But there's a lot to be said about good quality sleep and what that does not only to the physical body, but to your cognitive function and how you take on that next day. So what's your take on sleep and recovery?
So I used to be that entrepreneur, business owner that would pride myself on only being able to get away with, 2 to 4 hours of sleep and be like, oh, like I'm an animal, I can do it. But I also didn't realize how much I was leaving on the table by not sleeping the extra 3 or 4 hours, right? And so one of the first things that we help people do is like get up to 7 to 9 hours of sleep, depending on where you're at, right? And so like the reality or the benefit of that is that your working time becomes so much more productive that you don't need to spend as many hours doing it. And so like overall quality of life is way better. So yes, like one of the things that we have people track is how much sleep they're getting, because it also allows us to see how well they're doing in making progress, like physically, emotionally, energetically with a certain amount of sleep. And if they're lagging, then it's like, oh, cool. Let's bump up your sleep by an hour and see how you feel. And then most people are blown away. And then it's funny because when people are getting more sleep, they don't need as many energy drinks or coffee or stimulants or like all of those things that actually can cause a cognitive drain or stall, right? So like the shitty part about it is like you don't sleep very much, so you take all these stimulants and these stimulants keep you up longer, but then they also dull your overall energy. Whereas like if you just sleep, you won't need 10 cups of coffee to make it through the day, and you'll have all the energy that you fucking want.
And also just talking about sleep and tracking sleep. So one of the things that I do is on my iWatch, I typically charge it right before bed, right before I'm about to knock out for the night, put it on, make sure that it has a full charge. And then I use an app called Auto Sleep. Again, that's Auto Sleep. And again, if anybody who's interested, I will leave a link in the video description and the show notes below. But what that does is it gives you a great snapshot as to how much deep sleep you're getting, REM sleep, and how many times you're moving throughout the course of the night, and all of these different variables. And then if you can track, and again, for me, it's really important to track things, because if not, then it's just out of sight, out of mind. And not everybody's like this, right? But for me, it's important. So I can now correlate the amount of hours that I need to feel my best. And here's the thing, there's not a specific formula for everybody. What I've noticed for myself, a lot of people preach 8, 9 hours, 7 hours of sleep. For me, my sweetest spot is 6 hours of sleep. If I can get 6 good quality hours of sleep, I am ready to rock and roll for the end of the day. And then you mentioned something too about taking doses of coffee and all of this stuff. Being conscious of how you're getting your pick-me-up is also important. So for example, I'm Cuban American, so I have Cuban coffee with me like all the time. And what I've had to do is switch from how much Cuban coffee I'm drinking, which is basically like liquid crack, for those of you that have never had Cuban coffee, to now making small little adjustments. So doing like a variation of a bulletproof coffee really gives me the sustained energy and also just the mental clarity that I need throughout the course of the day. Another thing that that I supplement with, I guess you could say, is a tea called yerba mate. So basically you still have all of this caffeine, but it's just the release mechanism is so different that you don't get the jitters. It doesn't keep you up in this weird way. You don't have that huge crash. So finding little hacks like that too, to where you can kind of have your cake and eat it too, I think is important throughout everybody's journey.
For sure. Well, that to me, like, comes back to not having a prescribed way of like nothing is definite. This is good or bad. It's like, all right, cool. Like what works well for you. And in my opinion, like the only way to establish what actually works well for you is to track it, because you'll know exactly what you're doing and how you like the response. And so like even with like you tracking your sleep and the quality of your sleep, then you can realize like, oh, cool, like on a night that you did get shitty sleep, what was the difference? Did you have a couple drinks before you went to bed? Did you have your Cuban coffee later in the day? Did you and your wife get in an argument before you went to bed? Like, what was it that happened before that restless night of sleep? Or is it just like you're excited for the next day? Because then you can identify what caused it, and you can make the decision if you want to remove that. If you know, and then moving forward, it's like, oh, cool. I know that if I have more than 3 beers, I don't sleep as well. So if I go out, I make the conscious decision if I want to put myself in that position, or if I want to stick to 2 and then have a really good night's rest, like whatever. But now you have information to operate off of and make informed decisions versus just like shooting in the dark.
Right. And with regards to alcohol, and let's call a spade, most of us in the trades, we're either, even when it comes down to, forget about just a hard day at work, just if we have to go to a networking event and we're mingling, typically that involves some kind of a cocktail. So what you notice too is when you have drinks, just the quality of sleep just goes down hardcore. And it has something to do with how your body metabolizes the alcohol and also the oxygen levels in your blood and how those two correlate. So a lot of people say, oh, well, you shouldn't drink, period. Well, yes and no, right? I mean, no one's saying that you can't drink, right? But just understand that you should give yourself enough time between the last cocktail that you have and give your body the ability to metabolize that alcohol so that way you can regenerate the overall oxygen levels in your body so that you can afford to have a good night's sleep. And these are all small little metrics that if you're tracking it, now you're like, okay, I know how my body responds to 1 cocktail, 2 cocktails, 3 cocktails. But it is tedious stuff, isn't it? Like tracking all your stuff.
It can be, but like I mean, like tracking your metrics for your business can be tedious, but it's beneficial, right? So it's like there's pros and cons, and you have to weigh out. It's a cost analysis, right? Is it worth the effort to be able to look and feel the way that I want all the time? For me, yes. For some people, I would say yes. They just haven't experienced the benefit yet, and so it's one of those things where it can be tedious, but it's always worth it. And I think the reason that some people burn out is because they're putting in a lot of effort and they're not seeing a result, right? That, in my experience, that's the only time anyone stops doing something, because people will work really hard as long as they're seeing a result for their effort. The only time they slow or think that it's not worth it is if their output stays the same and their return goes down. And so then, but that's why tracking helps, because if you see a diminished return, you can identify how you can improve so you can keep pushing forward.
Exactly. So what supplements do you recommend? And I know that you're like, hey, it doesn't seem like you're like a big guy on supplements, but do you recommend that someone have a routine as far as daily, weekly supplements that they're taking care of and making sure that they're getting enough of this in their body to not only increase, let's say, their cognitive function, but also to increase their physical response to the weightlifting and the resistance training and things of that nature?
Yeah. So there's a line of supplements that I like, and it's just because like I personally know and trust the doctor that formulated them, and all of them are very good products. And then if there's some, like there's a couple of sleep products, there is some workout products, and there's even like fat burners or fat loss products. But the thing about them that I really like is that, like, for the sleep product, there is no sedative, and for the workout products or fat loss products, there's no stimulant. So you're not just taking a bunch of caffeine, you're actually using the chemical components in your body to get the desired result, right? And so same thing like in regards to tracking your overall sleep. If you were to, take this supplement and then, an hour before bed, and then notice, oh, this is how much better I'm recovering. But like you were saying, supplements are there to bridge the gap. But most people won't get everything that their body needs through their dietary intake. So finding out what your body is lacking, and by implementing some stuff, trying things out, seeing the improved result based on what you're taking helps. Another one that's super easy for a lot of people is just like a magnesium supplement before you go to bed, because it can help kind of calm you down, put you to sleep, and then make for better rest. But I would say if you're going to take something for working out, nothing wrong with a pre-workout or an intra workout to help with hydration and recovery, and then something to help with sleeping. And so like the products that I use are called, they're Prestige Labs is the name of them. If you want, I can send you a link. If you use the link that I sent you, get a significant discount. So if you want me to
So
put
we
that in
will
the show
include,
notes.
send me over that link and I'll include in the video description below, as well as in the show notes, you can find a link to Prestige Labs and the supplements that they provide.
Yeah, and so those are the ones I personally use for if I do take a fat burner. There's a testosterone supplement. There's some sleep aid, some recovery, and then some pre and intra workout supplements, as well as they have protein and other things like that. But anything that they have, I stand behind, because, like I said, I've personally used them for years. All of my clients use them, and then I know the doctor that makes them.
So let's talk testosterone supplements. Because I think that's a big taboo subject as well. A lot of guys out there are like, you know what, let's shortcut this thing, and they'll just do a couple of cycles and, from God knows what. And then there's the guys that understand the importance of testosterone. They understand that testosterone levels naturally start to decrease with age. It's the most normal thing in the world. And some of them go to labs, just doctors that do testosterone therapy or what have you, hormone therapy, or natural supplements. How important are testosterone boosters in the open market? Do you recommend those, or would you recommend for people to actually spend a few dollars, get the real lab results with a real doctor, and go through some hormone therapy, and that way it's measured and it's tracked? What's your opinion on that?
I definitely think like going like the blood work route is the way to go, because like you said, anything that you take over the counter, there's going to be all kinds of stuff. But the reality is that women would actually benefit from anything over the counter more than men, because they have such a lower dose of testosterone or levels that, like, anything that you get over the counter or that you could just buy maybe will increase by like 2 to 6%. Whereas like for a man, that's not very much, but for a woman, that increase is exponential. So she can benefit a lot more than a man from anything over the counter. Whereas like a dude should go get his blood work done. And I would recommend doing it once, and then 6 months or a year later doing it again before you decide to get on anything, because like they have averages for numbers for everything. But just because like you have a number that seems low based on like whatever, like your body could naturally operate really well at a lower dose. Just like you operate better with 6 hours of sleep than some people at 8, just because you have what doctors would consider a low testosterone level doesn't mean that your testosterone is declining. And so similar to like if you've ever been pulled over for drunk driving, they do a breathalyzer in the beginning and then one at the end to see if you're climbing or if you're declining. And so same thing, I would schedule 2 tests to make sure that your levels are doing whatever they're doing before you decide to get on anything. But a hormone therapy or replacement is something that is very beneficial and can help improve overall, like, energy, health, longevity in life. So I would recommend getting blood work and looking into that.
Do you feel that there's a significant difference in the physical appearance of someone who's going through some kind of regimented, therapy, as opposed to a person who's just going in and doesn't really know where their levels are at? Have you ever seen a difference or noticed a difference when people make those changes?
For sure. So like I have someone, or we have a lab that we partner with, and any of our clients that are worried about their levels, we refer them. We have doctors that help with all of that. So same thing, I can give you a link if people want to dive into that, because it's super beneficial. But the measuring, it's just like everything else. Measuring and tracking it is always beneficial, because you can take something and you have no idea how much you took, so you don't really know the benefit. But then also, like, if you're doing testosterone or you're doing like injections, realize that it's gonna take 3 or 4 months before you actually feel or notice any difference. So like some people will do a 12-week cycle, and like it's not even long enough to get a cumulative effect. So you're not really doing anything, which is why having professional help makes a difference, because they'll let you know, hey, look, like this is how we should do it. They'll retest your levels, make sure that you're stabilized. And then if you want to get off of it, then they can help you taper off or do something. Because some people, they dose for life, and not to get jacked or not to get crazy, but it's just to be in a healthy range. And so like the only way that you can know that is if you're monitoring your blood work.
And it's not always about just getting jacked and, again, trying to win, a bodybuilding contest. Like, that's not what it's about. But it is about putting yourself in a state where you're like, okay, wow, my mental clarity is there. I've got the energy that I need in order to go ahead and take on my day. Like, I feel good. And that's really what it should be about, right? Like, number one, when you wake up in the morning and you're proud of what you accomplished the day before and you're excited, and more importantly, you have the energy to attack all of the things that are coming for that day. However you get there, just find a way to get there, right? And I think just like, when you excess is always a bad thing. If you're taking too many supplements and you're neglecting how you're taking care of your body in a natural state, that's not good. If you're probably living in the gym for 9 hours a day, that's probably not the healthiest life choice either. So it's all about, hey, what do you want to accomplish? What are your life goals? How do you want to feel? And make the adjustments as necessary for you, your lifestyle, and your body.
For sure. Agreed.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've been on a kick on lately is trying to do as many natural supplements as possible. And I don't know if you're familiar with, there's this company called Cykel, and it is what they call a biohacker stack. And basically what this is a line of mushroom extracts. And it's a full stack. So it comes with in a really nice display case, which I don't know, it's kind of fancy, but here it is. And it comes with cordyceps, chaga, turkey tail, lion's mane, which I absolutely love, and reishi. And there's like a bunch of other ones that they have, but this is what they call the biohacker box. And just again, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because always trying to find new ways to experiment with what's available in the marketplace and how it makes you feel. And what I can tell you is like, since I've been taking this biohacking stack, the cognitive function, the clarity, the brain fog, all of that stuff has literally been cut in half. I don't want to say that it's gone completely, but it's certainly been cut in half. Recovery time has been amazing, to the point where we were, again, in a networking event. And of course, what do you do when you're networking? You're having some cocktails and everything else. And we've been on this, my wife and I, for, I want to say about a month and some change. And we've been really religious about it. And my wife's not a big drinker. She's not a big drinker at all. She has a couple of cocktails, and usually that's it. 3 sheets to the wind. On this night, she consumed more than normal, but she was okay. Goes to bed, wakes up fresh as a daisy, and she's like, man, I wonder why I woke up and I felt so good. I was like, I don't know. The only thing that you changed is the mushroom supplement. And she's like, oh, wow, it's true. So it's like, again, small little changes to whatever it is that you're doing, like how that can benefit the overall body is really amazing.
For sure. Well, like you said, you have to be willing to try things and see how they work out, right? And so like you said, it's not as clean cut as like everyone that takes a mushroom supplement is going to feel that benefit, but like, that you took it, you feel better, and there's an increase. And so for anyone out there that's like, oh, I wonder if it'll work for me, the only way to know is to find out, right? And so like it probably like bridges the gap or takes care of any potential deficit you did have to get you back into an optimal place. Whereas like another person with a different lifestyle, different dietary choices, different whatever, they may not have the same imbalances or deficits. So they would have to try something, and something else would work for them.
Right.
But the only way to know is to try it and see if you feel better. And if you feel better, then fucking roll with it. Like.
Yeah, just roll with it. Find what works with you, and then get rid of the rest, and not trying to fit in a little box. And that's part of the entrepreneurial journey. Like, find what works for you, find your messaging, find your voice, find the right business, find your right fitness level. Like, all of these things, like, these are universal principles, and if it could really be applied to every stage of your life, man. And I'm just really glad that you came on, because, and again, a lot of people are like, man, like, this show is about restoration, and it's talking about the how to have a better business, but not enough conversation is being had with regards to, you are in fact the business. So taking care of your body, taking care of your mind, taking care of your diet, the longer you stick around, the more possibilities that you have of being wildly successful. If you cut your life short because of because the job is getting in the way, that's really sad. So finding a way to insert more physical activity and a routine that works for you is really amazing. So tell me, where can our listeners and the people watching the video, where can they reach out to you? Where can they find you? Where can they go ahead and kind of pick your brain and figure out more about what systems are out there that can go ahead and benefit their life?
Instagram is probably one of the easiest, or Facebook. So Instagram, my handle for most people is fairly complicated, but we can link it if we need. It's JO_GO_LIFT, which is Jogoleff. And then on Facebook, it would be Mickey Jogoleff as well. I might be maxed out on friends there, so you can take a gamble on that. But in either platform, like, you can message me. I'm an open book. I'm here to help with advice or whatever I can do to make sure that you guys are taken care of. Just to touch on, like, some of the things that I would recommend now doing if you wanted to make some healthy food choices is places like Costco or Sam's Club or Target. They have pre-cooked, like, meat, chicken, steak. Target's brand is called Archer Farms. It's like, it's basically just grilled meat that's already prepared. So, like, you could meal prep without having to spend a bunch of time in the kitchen. So just swing by the store and buy like a sous vide cook or grilled meat that's already pre-sliced. And then you can just grab that and go. And they have the same thing with like rice and vegetables. Or if you do want to hit like restaurants, one of the things I used to do is I would just call like an Asian restaurant and get steamed rice and steamed vegetables. And then a place like, Applebee's, and have them grill a bunch of chicken. And I would just order that, pick it up for the week, and then be fine. I did that a lot while working and traveling. And so those are little things that you could do that wouldn't take much time, but could set you up for success in regards to food moving forward.
That's amazing tips, man. Thank you so much again for being on the show. For everybody out there in the Restoration Nation, hopefully you got some good, valuable, actionable advice. And more importantly, the messaging today is take care of yourself, love yourself, be there for yourself, your business, your family, for the community. And you have to take time for yourself. Hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure that you tune in next time, and I'll catch you on the flip side.
You've been listening to Restoration Domination, interviewing the restoration business's top industry insiders, the movers and shakers, the hustlers and hackers. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. Hook up with us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Restoration Domination to catch video interviews, highlights, and behind-the-scenes content. And follow your host at Rico Garcia Jr. Till next time, this is Restoration Domination. Hustle, hack, dominate.